I'm here at Elma Cain's house in Union County, and also in the room with me is Peggy Clay. So Elma, could you tell me when and where you were born?
I was born at Hope, New Mexico.
Could you tell me about your family and how they got there?
Well, they were raised and lived around in the Sacramento Mountains, and that's in southern New Mexico.
Okay.
And they were there, I guess, forever. I don't know how long.
Could you tell me what your parents did for a living?
Yeah, my dad raised sheep, worked with sheep and cattle.
Okay. Could you tell me what you did when you were growing up? Chores around the house?
Well, the same kind all kids do, but I went to boarding school when I was 9 years old.
Okay.
In Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Could you tell me about that?
It is Loretta Heights, run by the Sisters of Loretta, and I was there. My folks sent me there because we lived out in the mountains east of Truth or Consequences. We moved over there to the San Andres Mountains, and the folks, we had a one-room school, one teacher, 12 grades.
Wow.
And the folks didn't want me going there, so they put me in boarding school.
Okay.
I'd get to come home at Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, and then the summer. But that was about all I was at the ranch. And my dad rodeoed some, so in the summer we went to the rodeos.
Do you remember the Dirty 30s at all?
No, I don't.
You
Other
don't?
than I remember my grandfather had a bunch of sheep and cattle, and the army or the government, bought a bunch, and they killed them. So much for the cows and so much for the sheep. And I can remember a little bit about that, them driving them up to the edge of a deep canyon and just knocking them in the head and letting them fall in the canyon. That's about all I remember. Of course, we didn't have the Dirty 30s down there. It's just bad.
Okay, so you were telling me about the sheep?
The sheep, they killed them and knocked them in the head. I don't know if they did the sheep and cows the same place. I do not remember.
Do you remember how it affected your family?
No, other than we didn't have a whole lot.
Okay. So you said you went to this boarding school at the age of 9. Do you remember going to that one-room schoolhouse?
I never went, other than we went in the summer when they had dances, but I never went to school there.
Okay. So what was boarding school like? Could you tell me about it?
Well, it was very scary, I thought, to start with, because I didn't know anything about the nuns, and it took me 2 or 3 weeks to get adjusted. And when I did, well, I was ready to go back when I went home, because I had no brothers and sisters. It was just me, and it was sort of lonely after being around a bunch of girls.
What did you do for fun at boarding school?
Well, we studied a lot. It's a lot different than school this day and time. And we roller skated, and I played a lot of tennis when I got older. And read, that was about it. It was pretty routine. Everything was set, do this, do that. It wasn't, you didn't just up and do it.
And what did you study there?
All the basics. All the basics. When I got in high school, I studied Spanish 2 years and Latin 2 years. Of course, they didn't do me a lot of good.
Did you, you went to boarding school through high school?
All through high school. I graduated, and then I went to Denver, to Loretta Heights, to college 1 year.
Okay. So in high school, what did you guys do for fun? Because it was an all-women's boarding school.
Well, we played just like other kids do, and that's about it.
Did you have dances with boys?
No.
No.
No 4-H and no dances. And of course, some of the people in the town came, they called day pupils. They came to school, but they never lived there.
Interesting. So you went to college for a year, you said. What did you study?
I wanted to be a secretary, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But my fingers didn't work real good on the typewriter, so if I'd have gone back, I would have changed my major, but I didn't. I didn't go back.
So why didn't you go back?
I got married.
Okay, so tell me about who you married and how you met your husband.
I married a neighboring rancher's son,
Mm-hmm.
and he had been in the service, and he got a medical discharge, and so we married during the war,
Mm-hmm.
which is not like weddings now.
How is it different?
Well, I didn't have a wedding dress like they have now,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have any shower, and didn't have any attendants except 2 witnesses, and my mother and his mother. That was, was very small.
Mm-hmm. So what did you do after you got married? Did you live with your parents, or did?
No, we moved to I guess you would call it another ranch part of his folks' ranch,
Mm-hmm.
and we lived there, and he worked cattle and what have you.
Okay, so what year was that?
In 1943.
Okay, 1943. So could you tell me about working on the ranch?
Well, I guess I cooked and helped brand, and I did ride horseback a lot whenever I was needed,
Mm-hmm.
and that was about it, just routine ranch life.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that? Did you learn that as a kid, or did you have to learn that since you were at boarding school?
Well, no, that was just everyday life when I was home.
Mm-hmm. Was it different, a transition from going with a school where you were living with all these women around to living on a ranch that's more isolated?
Well, it got lonesome at times, but otherwise, no, I didn't have time to think about it a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. And so then, could you tell me how you got to this ranch?
Well, we are displaced ranchers. The Army came in 1944, 45, and the ranchers, they told the ranchers that after the war was over, the ranch would revert back to them, and they wanted it for a bombing range.
Mm-hmm.
It's a White Sands missile range. And so they came in with their planes and everything, and then we had cattle down on a part of the bobbing range, and we had to get off. And we had about 300 head of cattle that needed a home. And so my husband and his father and brother came up here hunting a place to move with the cattle. And they found this place and bought it, and we moved up here. And that was in 1949.
1949.
Yeah.
So why do you know why they picked this place?
This place, well, they liked the live water. There was some water here. And
Mhm.
at that time, there was a lot of old grass, which we didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't go back south.
Mm-hmm. Have you visited the old place?
I beg your pardon?
Have you visited since you left?
Oh, down there?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, we went down, but I'd never want to go back.
Okay. So could you tell me about this community when you moved here? What was the community like?
Well, there was more people than there are now, and I guess we had more kids in school.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a friendly community, and we got along good here.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here a long time, over 60 years.
Okay. And so did you do most of your exchange and things in Amistad? Did your kids go to school there?
Yes, they did. Both girls went to school and graduated from Amistad.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell me what Amistad was like?
Not a whole lot different than it is now, except we did have a store and a garage, and they did sell gas.
Mm-hmm.
And of course you get some things at the grocery store, and the church is there, and the school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were more kids in school earlier than there was later.
Could you tell me what people did for fun around here to socialize as a community?
Played basketball a lot, and they had dances, and I don't know, it was just involved. There was a 4-H program, and the Extension Club was here.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the drought of the 1950s? Do you remember how that impacted your family?
Well, in a way it did, but it wasn't as bad as the early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
But it sort of slowed things down, but other than that, we survived.
So could you explain how it slowed things down for you?
Well, you didn't have as good a calf crop, therefore you didn't have the money in your pocket that you did otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we were busy.
Mm-hmm. And where did you do all your business? Was it in Clayton or?
Well, for a lot, yeah, in Clayton and sometimes Dalhart, but mostly Clayton.
Could you tell me what Clayton was like when you moved here?
Well, it hasn't changed a great deal through the years. Of course, it has changed, but it was slow that I guess maybe I didn't notice. But it's dwindling now,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm sorry to say.
So were there more stores or things?
Yes, there were more dry goods stores and Five and Dime
Mm-hmm.
and J.C. Penney's. But there's a lot. There's no Five and Dime and no J.C. Penney's anymore. Of course, it's smaller,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still businesses there and a real, fairly, I think, a nice grocery store.
Mm-hmm. So when you moved here, did you have electricity?
No, we did not, and the road was not paved.
Okay, so
We came here in 49, and in late 1950, I think it was, we had electricity, and that was amazing. And the road, I don't remember the year it was paved, but that was good too.
Mm-hmm. What was the most amazing thing you remember about getting electricity?
Seeing all the cobwebs and dirt in the gutters. Showed exactly how good a housekeeper you were. Well,
I turned off the lights.
well, it was nice to have.
Uh-huh.
And we used to play cards by the cola lamps,
Uh-huh.
and it was nice to see your cards a little better. We had monthly card parties, and that helped pass the time.
Mm-hmm. What kind of cards did you play?
We played pitch and progressive rummy later on, but mostly just tray pitch.
Mm-hmm. And how far did people come to play cards with you?
Well, you know where Vivian and Joe live?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that far. Just mostly,
Wow.
right around
Yeah.
here. I guess probably they were the furthest.
Uh-huh. That's nice. What else did you guys do to get together?
Well, on branding day, usually all of the men came and the women came and helped, prepare the meals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of a play day. The kids had fun. And I guess that was one of the things that we did.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned electricity. When did you get a telephone?
Well, I'd have to stop and think. Clara was a great big kid, and so probably she was, I don't remember, but I know it was really exciting. It had to she had to be in high school, so it's been a good long while. It was nice. Of course, we were on a party line,
Mm-hmm.
and it was sure nice with eavesdroppers. Sometimes you'd ask them to hang up, and when they hung up, well, they just lay it on the table and go on, and then you didn't have a phone.
So did you use the phone a lot if you knew people were listening?
Well, as much as you wanted.
Yeah. So how did you communicate before the phone?
We'd go. Get in the car and go. That was about the only way.
If someone was in trouble or hurt or needed help, how would you get the word out?
Usually you'd just get a hold of them the best way you could. Get someone, I don't remember us having very many emergencies like that. I'm sure there were some, but in my mind I can't remember.
And so tell me about your kids. When did you have them?
Clara came in 1944 before we came up here. And when we came up here, she was right at 5 years old. And then it was almost 11 years before I had Noni and had her here.
And where did your children go to school?
My children went to school at Amistad.
All the way through high school?
All the way through high school.
That's good. And so what was school like then? What did the school do in Amistad?
Well,
kinds of activities?
We had parties like all schools have, but it was so different to boarding school that the first time I went up here to take Clara to school, well, I was out in the hall and the bell rang to change classes. Well, it's like a stampede in the hall, and it wasn't like that in Bible school. And I backed up against the wall, thought I was going to get run over.
So how was it different?
Well, it was noisier, and the teachers were not as disciplined, I guess. But it was all right, but it was so different to what I expected that I knew. But it was fine. It got under your skin.
Interesting. So what would you say makes this community special?
Caring for one another.
Could you give me some examples?
When someone gets sick, well, they usually, respond with help of about any kind, chores or take in food, and people are just really friendly and helpful. And lots of times after they've been in the hospital, well, they take them food for several days so they don't have to cook, which is very nice.
That's nice. So you've been in ranching for a long time. How has ranching changed in your lifetime?
Well, have to stop and think. They have sale rings now that help you, and used to the buyers came around to your ranch and would buy your stock, but not anymore. They go to the sale ring, or they do come and contract cattle sometime, but not often. Of course, here it's a lot easier than it was down south.
How's it a lot easier?
Well, the distance isn't as bad, and they truck things where before they had to trail herd them wherever they were going, which was a good long way sometimes from the ranch into the railroad or whatever.
Any other things you could think of how ranching's changed?
Well, I think help is harder to get. Lots of people want to work, but they don't want the isolation that they find out in the country. I think that's the main thing. There's not as many activities that they like to take part in because you have to go further.
So when you ran this ranch in the early days, did you have ranch hands?
No.
No.
We never. Well, occasionally, but not often. Whenever we branded, usually the neighbors came in and you didn't have anybody hired to help.
Is that still the way you do it?
We still have, Michael does hire somebody, but my husband and I didn't. We didn't have any hired hands.
And were you involved in women's extension or anything like that?
Yes, I was for a long time.
Could you tell me about it?
Well, I just went to Extension Club and the agent came out, learned lots of different things.
When did you start going?
I can't remember. But I haven't been since Noni was born because I was sick the whole time and I carried her and I dropped out and I never did go back.
So what did you learn while you were in it?
Oh, lots of things. How to make candles and how to make flowers and cooking and a lot of things that lots of people never experience from a home agent.
Mm-hmm. What other kinds of community activities have you been involved in your lifetime here?
Showers, wedding showers and baby showers,
Mm-hmm.
and housewarmings.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that's important?
Probably not, other than the kids wanted me to tell you how I got birthday cakes when I was in boarding school.
So tell me.
My mother used to bake me, of course it was about 50 miles from the ranch Las Cruces was. She'd bake an angel food cake and ice it,
Uh-huh.
and she would pack it in popcorn and mail it to me. Well, you know that the icing didn't stay on that cake.
Right.
And when we get the cake, when I was in boarding school, we had some steps. We called them the devil steps, because if they got dirty, we kids had to wax them, clean them and wax them. Well, naturally, that's where we ate the cake and popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't very careful, but the popcorn would absorb the icing off of the cake, and so we ate everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one of the things that I did at Bible school. I mean, at boarding school.
Are there any other things you did at boarding school that you want to tell me about?
I don't guess. We all lived in a dorm,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't have a lot of privacy.
Did you have chores there?
No, you didn't, other than your lessons.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have household chores, no. We didn't have household chores.
What did you get to do for fun there?
Well, we played tennis, and that's about it. I mean, we didn't play baseball or football, but tennis was one of the things we did.
Is your school still open?
No, they tore the school down. There's nothing there left of it in Las Cruces. And the school in Denver, the Jesuits bought it, and so it's mostly Jesuit. It's not Loretta Heights anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called Regis.
Mm-hmm. Are there any things you learned at that school that helped you in ranching?
No, I don't think so, other
No.
than doing your job. If you're asked something to do it. The nuns expected you, when they ask you to do something, to do it then, not in 5 minutes or not tomorrow, now. And that's one thing. I guess I've been hard on my kids, because I felt like that they should, when you ask them to do something, do it now, not tomorrow.
What about your parents? Are there lessons you learned from your parents that helped you on your ranch?
Well, yeah, to be consistent with what you did and accomplish what you started out.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I don't think of anything unless you ask a question
Okay.
and refresh my mind.
Okay.
I'm a little bit old.
I know. Okay, so do you remember in your memory, which drought has been the hardest on you and your family? Because there's been a lot of droughts out here, and you've had a ranch for a long time.
Probably the drought we had when it in the 50s, Peggy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was, the worst maybe.
How did it affect your family?
Well, we couldn't have that many cows.
Talking about how ranching had changed.
Well, it changed in the way that you didn't deliver your cattle like you did. The trucks come in and they hauled them to the sale or your bar or wherever, and that was a lot more convenient than anything else. Probably that the help and that has changed ranching a lot.
And then you were also talking about the 1950s drought and how it impacted your family.
Well, we just didn't have the calf crop that you would have. The cattle didn't breed back, and so your calf crop was a little shy.
Did you have to cut your herd back too?
We did, But we did too this last drought, though a lot of people up here sold out completely.
So how did you get by during that time?
Well, skimmed. Did the best we could.
Like, what would you skimp on?
Well, lots of times you wouldn't buy food that you didn't particularly need.
Did you grow most of the? Did you have a
Had
big
some,
garden? And
we had a garden and grew a lot. Of course, I don't garden anymore, but yes, we did have a garden and put up, pickles and beans and all of the things that you can put up.
Did you have chickens too?
Oh yeah, we had chickens. I used to raise chickens, get 100 fryers, and then I'd dress them and put them in the freezer to eat.
Wow.
Every summer I'd dress anywhere from
Wow.
75 to 100 fryers and put them in the freezer. The freezer was quite an invention for the country people.
That sounds like a lot of work. How long did it take you to do that?
Well, I would dress about 8 a day. A lot of people dress more, but I dress 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, and it'd take quite a bit, a long time. But we sure enjoyed them, eating them that way.
How big was your freezer?
I think it was a 20-foot is what
Wow.
it is. 18 or 20, but I never had a bigger one, but that, in fact, is still out in the garage.
Wow. How often did you go into Clayton or wherever you went to buy groceries?
We were lucky if we went every 2 weeks, which we didn't just go. There was other things that you'd go to. Your list would be like running out on the ground, things you wanted to do, and you don't get them all done. You just didn't go to town for one little reason. You had a bunch of reasons to go.
Was that hard when you first got married? Because you went from a boarding school where people were feeding you to thinking about buying a bunch of food that would last for weeks.
Well, probably my husband thought that things were different because that's not the way Mama did it.
Right.
But it was different. You had to learn a lot of things that you ordinarily didn't do. I could boil water without burning it. I had learned that much. But it wasn't easy making the adjustment with not very many people around, and of course we didn't have time to wonder about it a lot.
Did you feel that the women in the community was a supportive group of women?
Yes, they are.
So what did the women do for each other?
Well, a lot of things. They'd come in and help them can, and give showers, and then we played cards. That helped to get your mind off of different things. And it was just a friendly community.
And how important was church in your community? Or is church?
Some people very much so. Others no. They're planning we have one of the larger Bible schools here than they have, I think, anywhere in the state. We have kids that come and stay with grandparents, and it's a whole week, and kids come and stay with their grandparents or just with their friends. And it's a big deal here. In fact, this year it's the first full week of June.
Wow.
And Peggy knows about it. I helped with Bible school many years ago, and Peggy was one of the first ones that worked. And she used to take a class to Clayton to see the jail and the courthouse. And times have changed since then. I don't think she does that anymore.
When did you start Bible school? When did the church start Bible school?
They had Bible schools before 1961, but I started helping Bible school in 1961, 62. And then I worked for, probably 20 years, I don't know, but I don't do that anymore, but Peggy still does. But me and the Walker don't get along very good with children at Bible school.
Sure. And where did all the children come from? Did they come from locally?
Some, but some of them come from grandparents. They come from, I have a granddaughter, bring her grandchildren from Bosque Farms.
Okay.
And they come from all over, stay with grandparents, and then the kids come from Clayton and Naravasa and Logan and places up north. But it's not just an everyday occurrence.
Right.
They appreciate coming and like to come.
So you did that for over 20 years, it sounds like. How has it changed, the Bible school, while you were doing it? Because it sounded like it started with some small and grew.
Yes, it did. I think they basically do the same things we did then. We had men come in to let the kids know that it wasn't just women that were interested in religion, and they have a speaker, I think, every day, and it's just better than it used to be. I'm sure they have more activities that get the kids involved in musically, but they learn a lot about Jesus Christ.
Okay. So it looks like you have several other family members living on this ranch. So could you tell me about the ranch now?
Well, my grandson and his family live up in the other house. They have 5 children, and it's nice to have them here because they check on me and they can do the chores whenever Michael's gone. It's just different to have more family around, and then my youngest daughter and her husband are here part of the time. I guess you can say they live with me, and he's the minister at Springer,
Okay.
so he isn't here all the time. Noni pretty much is here, but sometimes not. But I don't ever feel alone because I have all of the kids up on the hill.
And how important is it to you to pass the sort of ranching tradition to your family?
Well, that's all I've known. I think it's a way of life that should be continued. I think people need to know about it and realize that it's just not, it doesn't just happen. You have to work at it.
So what makes the way of life so special?
I think being together, a part of the community, and your friends and all, I think it's just important.
Okay. So we talked a bit about how Clayton changed and how Amistad changed and how ranching changed. Can you tell me, what about the environment around here? Has it changed? Has the weather changed? Has the water changed? Has the vegetation or animals changed?
I don't think the animals have changed much, but the environment is, right now, it's very good. But we have had, when it was real dry and hot, but you always come out of it. You just have to work at it and live it.
So if you said you always have drought and then you come out of it, how do you prepare for it?
I don't think you really do.
You don't?
No, I think you just live it. I don't think there's any way you can prepare for a drought.
So do you worry about it when you're in it? Or do you know you're going to...
A little. Well, sure. I mean, that's normal.
And do you adjust anything you're doing because of it?
I don't think so. You might not feed as much cake as you think you ought to, but enough.
Do you remember any sort of extreme weather events, like a really bad blizzard or hailstorm or something that impacted your family or your ranch?
We've had several hailstorms that, of course, that had sort of damaged the grass, but not like the catastrophes that they're having right now all over with flooding and what have you. We've not had any flooding yet, knock on wood. but it's not, hasn't been all that bad. Had several snows that were pretty deep, but not unreasonable.
Mm-hmm. So how does this place compare to where you grew up?
The turf is heavier, and we don't have greasewood here like they have in the south. And the ranches are smaller. They're more manageable because I think they had about 300 or 400 sections down there, and it took more hands to manage things there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't want to go back south.
Mm-hmm.
My roots are planted here. Been here too long, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So, what do you think the future of ranching looks like? You've gone from your parents to your whole lifetime to now you're seeing your grandchildren ranch. What do you think the future of ranching looks like?
Well, I hope it doesn't change a whole lot, but I'm sure that it will. Things that I've never thought of probably will change. But I hope it never gives up. I hope it always remains.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what kind of advice would you give the future generation of ranchers?
To hang in there and work hard.
Mm-hmm.
And go to church.
And go to church. Are there any other stories or things you'd like to tell me?
I can't think. Probably there are. I think there's a lot of things stored in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
computer, but they don't always come out.
That's okay.
I can't see that I've helped you a lot.
You have. I really appreciated your stories.
Well, you're quite welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm going to shut this off now.
Well,